So I'm coming to the end of my final cut now. I mean, I might still blast another couple of weeks after particularly heavy birthday and Christmas periods, but for all intents and purposes, my times of bulking and cutting are pretty much over. So with that in mind, I wanted to make a video, go through basically what I've learned over these many years of bulking and cutting, what I would say to my younger self if I was just starting out, maybe a few mistakes I made, and what I'm going to do next in terms of bulking, cutting and quote-unquote gaintaining. So let's do it. We're going to the beach. The beach has got nothing to do with it. We're still going. My bicep. Decent.
That's it.
Nice one. This isn't the beach. I wasn't lying though. We'll go there in the next clip. But before we do, I want to tell you about the sponsor of today's video. It's a pretty sick one today. I think you're going to be proud of your boy, right? The sponsor is Acer and AMD. And this is the Acer Swift 3. It's a sick laptop, and I'm going to tell you everything that is sick about it. First of all, it's 1.2 kilograms, mate. That's light. I could throw it, but I won't, right? That's ideal for if you're travelling around Greece and your girlfriend's taking up like 98% of your luggage weight with stuff that she's not actually going to wear. It's also ideal if you're like a weakling, skinny weakling like me, or Rob Lips or someone. So the fingerprint scanner on it is absolutely rapid. That'll save you 2 seconds every time you log in, because you don't have to type a password in. It's also pretty secure, provided you don't lose your fingers anywhere. It also has an AMD Ryzen 5 processor, right? Obviously I'm not a nerd, so I don't know what it means, but basically, right, it's good for all your video editing, your photo editing, watching your programs, all that kind of stuff. It makes it sick for that, as does the 83% screen coverage. Battery life is also noticeably sick. It hasn't even needed charging like virtually at all yet. There's loads of other sick stuff, so I think that's it. It's great. I'm using it loads while I'm traveling around Greece. You're gonna see me in some abstract places. I want to throw it to show you how light it is. I won't though. I want a beanbag. Okay, let's go to the beach actually now. How's that? So, you start out, you walk in the gym, first day you ever think about lifting a weight, right? We're gonna call that point A, and that's your starting physique, right? And then point B is like the poster on your wall. It's the A1 printout of Joey D. It's your goal physique, right? So the quickest route from point A to point B is probably just one big, really long, drawn out bulking phase followed by one cut, right? So what you would do is build enough muscle to get you to your goal physique, then a little bit more, assuming that you'd probably like lose a bit because that cut would have to be quite a long one, right? That's probably the quickest way. However, it's not particularly practical, is it? Because you don't really just want to get to the end point, you also want to enjoy your physique along the way, because this bulk might take you like 5 years, right? If you're going down the natty path, it's going to take you a very long time, and you're going to need to build more muscle than you think, right? And so you don't want to spend that entire bulking phase with like excess levels of body fat and never really getting to enjoy your physique, right? Because for a lot of that, there will be like a really good physique under there. It's just that it'll be covered, right? So instead of doing the one big long bulk and cut, you would break it down into smaller bulking and cutting phases, and the first bulk should probably be the longest by a long way. And then as you get closer and closer to your goal physique, the duration of those bulks can get a little bit smaller, and you can just tend towards that goal physique. Alright, we're in the airport, we got espresso Freddo, that's irrelevant. Alright, so first up, some home truths about bulking and cutting as a natty. Number one, generally speaking, your first bulk will be by far your most productive, and it's all pretty much downhill from there. Even though you will become more experienced at bulking, and so theoretically you should get better at bulking and gaining muscle as time goes on, all of that knowledge and experience will be outweighed by something mighty and powerful called newbie gains. Now that's not to say that you won't make gains in subsequent bulks, you certainly can and will, but you'll never recapture that same rate of progress that you did at the start. The only situation in which you actually could do that is if you stopped going to the gym for a long time and then you kind of experience newbie gains all over again, but I mean, ideally don't stop. Number two, you're gonna look smaller than you think at the end of each cutting phase. So you might reach the end of a bulk and look at yourself and think, right, I'll just do a little cut now, lose a few pounds of fat and I'll be at my ideal size, right? And then you actually get there and you're like, you know what, could actually probably do with another couple of pounds of muscle, maybe just a bit bigger chest, maybe just a bit bigger arms. Number 3, you'll probably gain fat faster than you expect on every bulking phase. So you can come to the end of a cut and think to yourself, right, I'm at a good leanness now. What I'll do is just eat in a shallow calorie surplus and I'll gradually make some gains whilst trying to minimize the fat gain, right? And that is obviously a great goal to have. It's something we should aspire to when trying to gain muscle. But then it comes to it, and I at least personally find that maintaining a shallow surplus in terms of willpower and self-control and self-discipline is probably harder than maintaining a calorie deficit. I think that's some kind of floodgates effect to do with the idea of being psychologically bulking and thinking, therefore, you don't have to be as strict, you're allowed to get away with a bit more, etc, etc. So the issue with that is that if you gain fat faster than you expect, it means that the total duration of your bulk is probably going to be reduced, because you're going to hit that point where you're probably uncomfortable with the levels of body fat a little bit sooner. Now this is something you will get better at with time, but it's certainly something that I failed at many times over. Number 4, if you really want to stay natty, then you have to get used to the idea that your peak physique is something that you will experience temporarily and not something that you can maintain. Now you certainly can maintain a good, maybe even a great physique year round, but your actual best shape is something that you might just have to enjoy very briefly once a year, and the rest of the time you'll have to be okay with not quite being in your best shape, right? And that's because naturally you can't really maintain simultaneously the muscularity and the leanness that you might be able to reach very fleetingly towards the end of a cut or in the first couple of weeks of a gaining phase when you're a bit carved up. Now that might all seem a little bit depressing, but to me it's just realistic, and realism can't really be depressing, can it? Because it's like being mad at gravity or something. It's just the way the world works. Now the good news is, even if you don't have great bodybuilding genetics, even if you don't have good genetics, it's still perfectly possible for you to achieve a physique naturally that most people would aspire to have. It just takes a lot of consistency and a very conscious decision and commitment to that. But there are a lot of truly natty people out there with seriously good physiques, right? Great physiques, and you can actually be one of them if you decide to, but you do have to decide. Now, further to that, and I want to be a little bit careful how I phrase this because my intention is not to offend juicy people, but I think that one of the benefits of remaining natty is that over the long term your physique should remain more consistent, and of course part of that is due to the wild fluctuations in hormones that you would experience if you were on gear, but I also think a lot of that is because if it's taken you a long time to get somewhere, aka to Gainville in this case, and you'd also know that it will take you a long time to get back there, then I think that you're going to be a lot less likely to squander those hard-earned gains and go through periods of inconsistency. Basically it was an absolute graft to get there, and you know it'll be an absolute graft to get back, so you know you're going to be more inclined to want to hold on to them gains, man. So aside from the traditional bulking and cutting phases, you may have also seen or heard of something called gaintaining. Now this is really just semantics, it's really just code for a very, very slow, lean gaining phase, or really the maintaining of a very, very, very shallow, almost imperceptible to the human eye calorie surplus. Now the idea is that doing it this way you wouldn't gain the same amount of fat that you might risk gaining during a bulk. However, with benefit comes risk, and the risk is that you don't maintain enough of a surplus to build any muscle whatsoever, and you just go for years and make zero gains, mate. I think we can all agree that is not ideal. Another of the costs is that it does require a lot of patience. So there are really two types of candidate for a gaintenance, is that a word? A gaintenance phase, right? The first is people on steroids. And I say that because the same rules don't really apply to people on gear, or at least not to the same extent, involving like the necessity of a calorie surplus to build muscle, right? That's because your anabolic, catabolic seesaw is skewed massively towards anabolism. The second candidate is people who aren't in any rush to make a lot of gains, right? And I think I probably fall into that second category. And the reason I say people who aren't in a rush to get any bigger is because a lot of a gaintaining phase is going to be the aintaining part of the word, as in staying pretty much the same for a long time, right? Now of course you can't just maintain a shallow surplus. Obviously, to go hand in hand with that, you do have to focus a lot on progression in your training. Gonna let these cars go past. So I expect for most people watching who do actually want to make some gains before the next mass extinction event, a gaintaining phase is probably not suitable, because after all, if you are maintaining a very shallow calorie surplus, then you run the risk of not having enough calories to make any gains, and then not actually making any, and leaving some gains ungained, leaving gains in the tank, leaving gains on the table, and that's not what we want to be doing. And you would, most of the time, just be quicker or get to your goal physique quicker by doing a bulk and a cut, or a series of bulks and cuts. Anyway, I think I'm going to try it, but this is a shit place to film a YouTube video, so I'll see you in a bit. So to begin with, I'm just going to eat around maintenance, be consistent with my training, and focus on progressing on my lifts. Because of all the bulking and cutting, I actually haven't spent a prolonged period eating around maintenance calories for pretty much as long as I can remember. Now I say maintenance, but if I try and eat around my TDE, due to my appetite, I'll probably end up a little bit over. So I'm just going to give that a try for maybe like 2 years, and if I have an extra 250 grams of lean muscle mass by summer 2022 or 2023, then I'll be pretty happy about it. And if I don't, I'm probably not going to cry either. One thing I do have on my side is that the bicep tendonitis that has plagued me on and off for years now seems to be cleared up, touch wood, which means that, I mean, you may have seen me curling the 8 kilogram dumbbells earlier in the video. So hopefully I'll be able to curl some decent weight soon, and even pull heavier as well. So aside from that, I feel a lot better generally after stopping squatting and deadlifting a couple of months ago, but that's a story for another day. The point is, I'm 99% injury free, so I'm in a really good position to just focus solely on my training. And so that's what I'm going to do. But the one thing that I do want to reiterate is that although it sometimes ain't pretty, bulking and cutting, the good old traditional bulk and cut phases, are the best route to go for 95% of people out there. It's better than trying to gaintain. It's probably more productive than trying to recomp, especially if you're natty. It ain't pretty, but you just have to do it. So let's see what happens. Let's see if this gaintaining is worth trying. Let's see if I'm making any gains. Let's see if I'm, to be honest, I'm probably going to be exactly the same in like 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, but exactly the same as what? Exactly the same as sick. Still sick. See you later.
Jordy Lenny is my hero.